Hello, hello, hello. Gotta start out the stream like we usually do. Calibrating the audio, making sure everything sounds balanced. Does it? Does it sound good? I think it would be a good idea. You know what? I think this is solid. I think this is solid. I also wanted to double check everything because I am using a different streaming service today because the other one was just constantly losing its shit. So we wanted to try something that might work better. It's also, I will note, it's, for some reason the streaming service isn't letting me record a wider image than this, which is fine. It's fine by me. It's just good. It's just a square. We're just gonna do a square instead of a rectangle, which I'm okay with. I hope y'all are okay with it too. Book that I read, El Sobrino del Mago, The Magician's Nephew, the chronological first book in the Chronicles of Narnia series. It took me so long, because this was the book that I read. Why are you blinking? What the fuck's going on here? That's scary. That's sketchy. Okay, figured it out. But this was the book that I read in Spanish. And when I say I read in Spanish, I mean I read a Spanish version as well as the English version so I can make sure I actually knew what was going on in case there were any confusion. And I did understand what was going on. I did just, you know, I'm not fluent in Spanish, so I missed some things about it, but overall I knew what was going on. And let's talk about that aspect of it first. For one, so the process that I started reading this was I wanted to read the Spanish version first and then read the English version to clarify things, and that was a mistake. It took me so long to read this book because I was so incredibly intimidated by the fact that I was reading a book in a language that I wasn't fluent in, and it led to me honestly barely reading at all. And even when I got to read, even when I started reading and I was still reading the Spanish chapter first, and then I'd go and read the chapter back in English, it didn't take me long, and it was extremely mentally exhausting to do, but it wasn't as horrible experience as I was scared it would be. But I was so intimidated, and it would stress me out so much that I ended up not reading a lot of the time. I didn't read most nights, and that's more than anything, that's why it took me so long to get this book done, is because I just wasn't reading often. I was too scared to read because I was scared I was gonna just feel like I was scared I was gonna just not understand what was going on, that I wasn't as good with Spanish as I had wanted to be in order to read a book in Spanish. But it was really not that bad. I do say the smarter decision, I want to say halfway through, I decided it might be, in order to get me to read this book and finish this book in decent time, it might make more sense if I read the English chapter first and then read it back in Spanish. And that was just in general a better idea, because in general, and when I was reading the Spanish chapters first, I was pretty solid on a lot of the verbs and stuff, so I understood the context that was going on. But when reading the English version first and then the Spanish version, I still was able to understand the general concept of a situation or a paragraph or whatnot, because that was something I could understand. But because I already knew what happening from reading the English section, then I could start piecing together what words mean what, or what phrases translate to this, because I had a good idea of what words were supposed to be there. So that was definitely, going forth when I read, because I do want to read more books in Spanish, going forth with that, probably going to be making sure to read the English version of the book first, then start Spanish version, you know, you get me. Another thing that I think this is probably the last note I have on just reading in Spanish was I purchased a print copy of the book because I was expecting to take a lot of annotations as I did this, which I did not. I did not like write in the book at all. I any notes that I did take, I took on my tablet, which, again, after I started reading the English version first and then the Spanish version, I really didn't need to take many notes. So that means I'm very comfortable with the idea of getting ebooks in Spanish, which is great because they are way cheaper than getting the print copies, if the book even has a print copy in Spanish. So that's cool. That's it. So that's that. On to the story. So what happens in this book is we've got these kids, Diggory and Polly. They're these English kids, bored, exploring around the summer, and they end up finding themselves in Diggory's Uncle Andrew's attic. Uncle Andrew tricks Polly, and by tricks I mean she's a conceited ass bitch. She, like, this entire time Diggory's been saying Uncle Andrew's crazy, he's out of his mind, you don't want to go near him. But Uncle Andrew's like, hey Polly, you're really pretty. And her immediate thought was, Diggory, what are you talking about? He's not crazy, he's totally fine. So he ends up tricking her into touching a yellow ring in his attic, and she disappears. So Andrew ends up sending Diggory in after her. He gives him 2 green rings and his own yellow ring. And they end up in this forest that's in between worlds. Which I wonder if they explore that in any of the other books. I don't remember. I used to read these books. I had the big single book set, but it's been so long. But he ends up, it spawns them in this forest that's between worlds. They find out that using the yellow ring transports you to the forest, and using the green ring transports you out of the forest. So they go and explore some of the other worlds. First world they go to is literally at the end of its life, and Diggory's a nosy little boy, and he sees this bell hanging, and he wants to bang it. He does that, and it awakens a witch, who was the person that destroyed the world. They try to escape her, but we find out that you don't have to be directly touching one of the rings in order to travel. So she grabs a hold of Polly, and when they touch the ring, she travels also to the forest between worlds. Polly and Diggory try to escape, but Diggory's like, but the witch is kind of dying in this forest. I feel bad. And Polly's like, she just murdered an entire planet, an entire world. Let's go. But that hesitation was enough. The witch was able to grab a hold of Diggory and made it to their world, our world. She goes, torments people for a little bit there, but Diggory ends up being able to grab a hold of her, takes them back to the forest. From the forest, they go to another world that is just being born, and that world is Narnia. So you see Aslan, who is like, he's singing a song, and it creates the stars, and then it creates the planet, and all the grass, and all the plants, and the mountains, as he's singing. And I will say, at this particular point in time, when they're going in the scene whilst Narnia is spawning, I think the author wanted to not, like, have, because there's like 3 or 4 chapters of just Narnia spawning, and I think the author wanted to not have all of that information, like, he wanted to break it up. But the way he did it was, you'd have someone doing something quirky, like Uncle Andrew would try and steal the rings. The witch would complain about being there, and that would last 2 seconds. And then there's a cab driver that they end up accidentally taking with them in between, around all the places. And he's like, shut up, listen to the song. And that would just go over and over again. So it would be, try to steal the rings. Everyone's, all right, you froze like 2 seconds, cabbie, shut up and listen to the song. And that would just happen over and over again, and it was very redundant and irritating. And I will say, also, at this point, from this point forward, the book is really just paint by the numbers, have a list. These are the things we need to check off to make sure we're like tying it to like all these different things that happen in the other books. If we're being honest, as soon as we get to Narnia, there's no plot. I honestly, in my memory, and because as a child, I read all of these books, and this was my favorite book, and I loved it so much, and I was like, this is the best Narnia book ever, which makes me scared for how I'm gonna feel about the other ones, because I'll probably eventually get to them. I think I have a readable copy of the entire Chronicles of Narnia, but I for sure have an audiobook with all of them. And so I'm a little scared to get to all of them. I do remember just being bored with some of the later ones, but I remember being so into this book, but I also, in my mind, the first chunk of the book that was them going and finding the queen and then fighting the queen in town, I remember that being the story. I remember the main part of the story is them fighting this queen and this evil queen witch chick, Jadis, I think is her name. Just fighting her in our world was what I remember being the big thing of the book, but it really isn't. And then you get to Narnia, there's just no plot at that point. It's just a list of telling you things that are happening primarily for the point of tying it into things that happen in the Chronicles of Narnia in the other books. So, for instance, the witch was fighting people with this bar that she tore off a lamppost in our world right before they took her to Narnia. And she throws it as Aslan as he's singing and creating life. And it bounces off of him and grows into a lamppost. So, like, that's one thing that you see just for the point of... It's weird. And then the cabbie is there, and he talks to Aslan, and Aslan asks him to be the king of his land, and then he proves that he's way too OP and just sings and brings the cabbie's wife to Narnia just by singing. So they are now the first parents, the first children of Adam that will rule over Narnia, and then their kids will rule over Narnia after them, as well as the next kingdom over. And so that's the thing. But now, of course, you have the evil queen who is in this town, or in this world, and Aslan's like, hey, Diggory, all of this is your fault, so you're gonna solve it. I want taquitos. Sorry. Side note. I want taquitos. Take note. But, you have Aslan, who's like, Diggory, all of this is your fault. Your nosy ass wanted to hit the bell and bring her over, and then because you couldn't yet tell that she was evil, you brought her into your world, and then you brought her into my world. So you're gonna fix this. You're gonna go travel all this way to get an apple from this magic tree, and that apple, once we plant it, will protect Narnia. And so he goes, he gets to the place, and there's warnings saying don't eat the apples, don't get it for selfish reasons, stuff like that. Don't get it for selfish reasons, don't get it for yourself as well. So Diggory got it. The witch is there, she's eating one of the apples and talking about how Aslan's lied to you, it's a thing of strength. Diggory's mom's dying from something, so she's like, why are you getting this apple for Aslan when you could get it for your sick mother? And that wasn't really a conflict at all. It felt more like the witch was talking at him, but in no way, shape, or form did he seem like that was really going to be a conflict. And whatever conflict there was in that situation, it only lasted for 2 seconds again. Then he and Polly and their now flying horse run back to Aslan. They plant the tree, and Aslan's like, woo, now because the witch ate the apple, which he always knew she would, she will be completely repulsed by this tree. So as long as this tree stands, Narnia will be safe. but like, because you were a good person and you did this for us, now I want you to get an apple. I've chosen an apple that you should get an apple to go take home to your mom, and his mom's all better now. And that's this, and they also go into this whole thing of after his mom eats the apple, he buries the apple along with all of the magic rings in the backyard. It grows into a tree, and then when he's middle-aged, the tree gets knocked over from a bad storm. So he turns into a wardrobe, but he never knew it was magical. Only the kids did. It's, yeah, like, the story aspect of it comes to such a grinding halt when we get to Narnia, because it's literally just there to describe Narnia for us. There's no real conflict at that point, because the witch, he doesn't defeat the witch. The witch is gonna get defeated in one of the other books. I think the main kids defeat her in their book, but we don't get that. We don't see that. So there wasn't really a conflict in this book at all. I'm very disappointed. I was very disappointed with The Magician's Nephew. I was expecting a lot more from it, but we didn't get that now, did we? So that's really all I had to say about this book. Yeah, it was definitely, reading in Spanish was definitely some trials and tribulations, and this book in general was way less interesting than young Bryanna hyped it up to be, which is sad, but that's, it happens. So that's it for me for now. Next book I'm going to be reading is Critical Failures number 4. This is probably going to be the last of these books that I'm able to read, because I don't own any other of them, and my preference would be to get them as an audiobook, but audiobooks are expensive. Oh my lord. Audiobooks are expensive, and Audible also, like, really got to clutching its pearls when it came to its audiobook subscriptions. Like, I used to have, I think it was like a gold membership or something, where every month you got 2 credits to get free books. And granted, were they probably losing money on that? Probably, but, or like, not even losing money, but they were probably not making as much profit as they could have been. So now they only have a subscription that I think is the same cost as that subscription that I had, and that one only lets you get 1 credit for a book, which is lame. I might end up just doing Libro FM instead for my next subscription. That would be my preference, but I also don't know if they have this series on there. I'd have to look. But yeah, Critical Failures book 4 is going to be the next book that I read. I will pop onto my Discord a little later to give you guys the rundown of what my current plan in terms of my book scheduling is. I also do plan on doing another update stream, so I can give it to you there, but you can find my Discord down below, as well as my main channel, which is where I would do my update stream. But yeah, that's all I've got to say here. Thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, Addictions friends.